didn't know that maximum security correctional facilities like this were such a fan of Electric One Melody songs. I don't know what the fuck this is. You are both stunningly beautiful and incredibly terrifying. I found this painted stone at the intersection at a intersection in a subdivision. So cute. Look at that. It's just a cat. There's some really colorful night sky staring at the moon. Or at least, I mean, it's with the moon, it's in the back. You know what I mean. Well, I find it cute, personally. Okay, oh. Is that gonna work? Time. Okay. That'll have to work. Oh my god, can I not go 2 seconds without something interrupting this? Yep. Keep on flying south. And farther away. And good, you're gone. Okay, now you can be America's problem. Or Toronto's. Yeah. Hi. So you probably are noticing something different. I got new gloves. They're very warm. They're made of some sort of fake fur inside. I think they're filled with down. That material that keeps things, like certain clothes, insulated. Got them at a gas station. Oh, and a hat. Because the winter months are coming and I had no actual, other than this coat, well, proper winter attire. Still have yet to get, snow pants, though. Oh yeah, and I guess my lips and my eyelids are black now, or have black makeup. But that's not important. Okay, well, before I get into what I want to get into, as usual with most of these videos, let me start off by saying something else, or a few other things relating to, well, mainly relating to different things that aren't as, well, they have an what I'm going to say has an involvement to, like, certain things, so what I'm going to say, I guess, has involvement to, what I'm going to say here. Firstly, I'm not psychologically doing very well right now. Seems like, I guess, some things have, well, as I had said before before leaving the COD videos, I guess that some things with my existential and morality crisis had gotten worse since my time being up, well, when I was in Crow's Landing. But, anyway, but right now, just quickly touch on, I mentioned in my, someone in my last 2 videos. Oh, that is shaking the lens. I mentioned somewhat in my last 2 videos, and even I guess the 7th part of Exploring Ottawa, that some of my psychosomatic neurological issues, specifically relating to memory, had been, well, before it had been word finding mainly, but memory problems have started becoming an issue for me again, blurred memory. And I could try and figure out reasons why. There's probably a few factors. Yeah, that sucks. I've been I've gotten frustrated and upset with them, like these issues that I'm dealing with. Similar to how, not to a point of suicidality as as the last few months of me being in Toronto were, but and those pseudo-neurological problems weren't the main reason for my depression. They were a factor in it, but anyway. Oh my god, I thought you had left! Are those your friends just tagging along? Yeah, get where you're going. Catch up. Geese. They all are a bunch of assholes. They deserve death at every corner. No. Just... What the hell? You guys are going the wrong way. You're not supposed to be heading northwest. You're supposed to be heading south. Okay, well, I think the captain of the flock there is kind of off course greatly because they're all flying. Okay, whatever. Getting distracted from that. Anyway, my neurological issues have been relating to memory have been bothering me a lot more than they were when I was at my extended relative's cottage. And, well, there's only 3 things I can really do is try and critically think, try and remember, or just think. Try and initiate the ability to think, which I can think, but memory affects that. I just try and remember and try and think. So I can critical thinking and trying to remember, 2, putting up with it, and other than that, all I can do is cry. That's about it. And trust me, there have been many nights, especially as of recent, where I've been crying, but well, right now that's all I can do. Try and assess my situation and then deal with... Oh, those 2 are far, far behind. I'm starting to think that these geese are just kind of scattering to get on track with their migration. I said in my, the 5th part of Exploring Ottawa, when I was over the Ottawa River, there was just some geese that made a joke about how they were like, oh shit, we're late, and they just got going. Yeah, that seems to be that again, just in a lot larger quantities of geese. Yeah, anyway, so my memory issues have been bothering me. Even though the fear, I guess, is somewhat still there, I'm no longer afraid of, like, well, I'm not worried that it's like before when I was in Toronto and there was just the possibility that it was psychosomatic, these issues, and there was still, nothing was concrete until I actually left the city. Or I said in, like, videos when I was last few months in Toronto that it's most likely psychosomatic, but there was uncertainty because, well, what I would consider to be concrete. Anyway, this is most likely, or most definitely not, dementia. And here's a bit of neurology or a way to test if something is, in terms of memory problems, if it's relating to psychology, dissociation, or depression, or I guess blocking out, or what I guess would be, what's the name for it? Psychogenic amnesia, which is where you experience a traumatic event and you remember a memory is placed. Either you completely forget the event or anything that happened in a certain time period. You forget a certain time period during the events, or the memory of what happened is replaced with a false memory, which can relate to, I forget the technical term for it, but it was coined by Carl Jung, the psychologist and neuropsychologist and philosopher. But it's basically false memory syndrome. It can induce that as well with psychogenic amnesia. Anyway, a way to test if, like, your memory issues are psychosomatic or potentially physical, if some sort of lesion on the hippocampus or the prefrontal cortex, or atrophy of those two regions of the brain, which primary control of memory in most regards, pretty well all regards, is basically if most times patients who are gaining dementia, really any type of dementia, but mainly when it starts affecting memory, or specifically with Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, which usually affect memory first, or in some cases Huntington's disease. Way to test is that usually early onset dementia patients won't remember an event from hours, or maybe not hours, but days before, or yeah, I guess it could be hours depending on the severity of the atrophy and how much it's disrupting hippocampal function. They won't remember things when reminded of them or given evidence that it did happen. They won't remember it most often, and usually people who suffer from psychological memory loss or blurred memory or memory trouble, they will remember in some fashion, like once something reminds them of it. They might not be able to fully grab it themselves without something to basically egg it on, but they will be able to grasp some form of it once they've been reminded of it. Again, that is if they're not experiencing some form of severe false memory syndrome, but anyway. So my memory issues have been bothering me, and it's been making me very upset. I'm not going to go into why I think it. Well, actually, I'll talk about why I guess this could be a factor in it. I've been getting quite stressed internally a lot recently. The place, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the place where I've mainly been situated here in Orleans are the people I've been staying on and off with, but primarily have been staying with, like, here in Orleans, the Orleans district of Ottawa, ever since I've gotten here, which, again, primarily where I've been situated. I am going to have to start paying rent to people who own the place that I've been, well, staying at. This primarily, like, because now, since being here in Ottawa, I've slept on the streets a total of, well, technically once overnight, but after I left the hospital, in part 6 of exploring Ottawa, I caught some Z's. I caught up on sleep just in a little woody patch outside of the hospital. So I did sleep there. So technically, if you're counting only overnight, then technically once. But if you're just counting just sleeping on the street, then it's been 2 times here. Oh yes, I actually should mention, I haven't gone back and rewatched my videos from the beginning of this whole trek. Back when I was in Peterborough, or when I was leaving Toronto. I can't remember completely if I said, something is telling me that I might have been saying like a week and a half when I was in Toronto, the week and a half that I slept on the streets. I think at points maybe I was saying a week, but realistically it was more a week. If I said week and a half, then I was misspeaking. Technically I did, if you're not in Toronto but going out of the city, I slept, which would led into being a week and a half. I slept on the streets at many intervals. And then there was the time where I stayed at some relatives in Goodwood. The first night that I left Toronto, I slept in a grazed off cornfield. And then once got to Peterborough, I slept outside of a motel, slept behind it. And then I was kicked off in the morning. Anyway. And again, in Toronto, it was a week. I took a week to prepare for my departure from Toronto, and if I was saying, maybe I wasn't, maybe I'm just misremembering and I didn't say that, and I did say, like, a week that I had slept on Toronto. On the streets of Toronto, mainly. And there were the times where I said I slept at certain friends' houses for certain nights, but primarily was on, well, either primarily or half and half was on the streets, but still slept on the streets. I've talked about this before anyway, or at least in some depth. Anyway, so my apologies for that. Again, with my psychosomatic memory issues, the main problem I now have is really just my perception of time, like the passage of time in terms of memory recall. It's getting better when I was at the cottage, but well, now it's not so great again. So anyway, another thing I should say though, well, getting into more of my problems right now, why I guess that stresses me out for having to pay rent, not entirely, and again, they're more than entitled to ask for rent, because it is their property, where I've mainly been staying. Well, I haven't acquired a job yet, is the thing. How it went, I should probably clarify as well, how I went to the Newton Strip Club when I tried to apply there. It went well enough. It went pretty well. A lot better than I actually was maybe thinking it might go. I went there the day after I filmed my last video to this, the social constructs video, and whether or not we should just consider capitalism to be a form of fascism. Anyway, I went there the next day, spoke to the booth attendants. They were all very nice people. Spoke to the manager. They were quite nice as well. And just tried to get a read of the place, and again, as I do, psychoanalyze everyone I speak to, or try to at least. So anyway, the manager took my resume and said, "It's nice to meet you. We'll give you a call if, like, once I review it, or like if we need you." And I said, "Great, thanks." So, yeah. But I haven't, well, that was nearly, well, it's been beyond a week now, and I've tried calling them on one day, a few times, because, I hadn't received a call back, and the other night, I actually, because of, well, things that have been happening, I decided to also see about applying to another strip club that's closer to downtown, in the Veneer district, I believe it's called, closer to, Gloucester, called the Playmate. I called the, front desk, there, asked if I could speak to someone, and they said, well, and this was, at, 11:10 at night. They said, you can come down now to speak to them. I was like, now? And they're like, they're really busy, and they can't come to the phone right now, but if you want to come by here, you can. And I was like, well, fuck. I'm in Orleans. They're in Veneer. So anyway, long story short, I ended up calling a taxi, which if you know what I've explained recently with my whole moral dilemmas, I didn't want to do. I didn't feel like I had a choice. Other than, well, walk all the way there, which by the time I got there would have been closed. Oh, and also I have been taking buses as of recent, somewhat. Mainly because, well, for certain reasons, if I was to get a job at the Noon Strip Club, well, depending on where I may be staying once I get a job there, because it might not actually be in Orleans once that happens, I may have to commute, which again, I've already stated why I don't just take a bus to other cities, why I'm not going to in previous videos, for this whole travel, for my travels that I'm on right now. And anyway, though, but I'm not gonna abuse that. I'm not going to. I've stated my issues with taking buses, during this whole thing. Though I should actually clarify, because I don't think I talked about this in my before leaving the college videos. I actually did take the bus in Lakefield, Ontario, once when I had to go in. It was actually the day that I pulled the all-nighter in Lakefield, which the clip of that I put at the beginning of the first, before leaving the college video. It was the day before I filmed that, when I pulled the all-nighter. Because I was going in for some supplies, and then I thought I had to go into Peterborough for some stuff, and I needed to charge my golf cart, Trudy, and, yeah, I was just charging them in Lakefield, and I was like, fuck, this is not gonna work. And I felt, shit, well, I really have no choice, and I took the bus, went into the Curve Lake First Nations Reserve area. It was going to take me to Peterborough after another loop, but then I said, screw it, I don't think I'm going to be able to get this or make it in time, and I just got off. But anyway, I've explained that before. And plus now, I actually have a small vehicle that's still being stored in somewhere else. My side-by-side, Carlene. Which, here's another thing I'll state. Depending on how much finance I'm able to accumulate, in the coming weeks, when I do get hopefully do get a position of some kind, depending on how much I have saved up, there may be a way for me to actually drive that on the road. Now, I actually finally got an Ontario citizenship card, an identity card. So yeah, that's great. A bit more valid ID, or what's considered valid. Still don't have a license, but gonna have to figure out a time where I can actually try and get some form of license and possible registration for my side-by-side. But given that my iffy morals with... Okay, the more I look at it, even right now, I'm starting to really have a huge problem with licensing. My libertarian beliefs, I don't really think that that can actually fully be policed in terms of granting permits and licensing for certain things such as medical work, psychiatric work, even things like gun control, or even, which, again, oh god, it's a piece of the lipstick. Or licensing for driving a vehicle on the road. Anyway, I have iffy issues with that, especially with small vehicles. For people who are of lower income and need some sort of transport, or who are disabled physically. So, yeah, have iffy issues with that. But anyway, I've had this thought for a bit in my head. I'm not going to say it here in case someone... Well, I'm not going to say what I'm thinking here. But for the winter months, there might be a way for me to actually drive it on the road that not only will allow me to use it as transport, but would actually be doing a good service, or at least what I would consider to be a good service, to the surrounding communities where I go. I'll call it a... Well, even though it would be doing that good service purpose, in some form it would be, I guess, a disguise of the vehicle for what it really is. I'm not going to say it here. So, yeah, that's just a thought that I have right now in my head. But again, I have to actually see what my financial situation is at the time. Good lord, I really do rant. 25 minutes. Anything else I want to state? Okay, oh yeah. So, in the time now, since I'm actually getting antsy with possible, well, with trying to find a job, I've applied to Sobeys, which is a grocery chain here in Canada. Don't think they have them in the United States, but it's in, well, excuse me, it's supposed to be a more organic-based grocery chain. And I've applied, well, I'm going to be, later tonight actually, I'm going to try and call the owner of that small gas station on, well, towards the center west end of Orleans. I showed it in my fourth part of Exploring Ottawa when I was out fruit picking, and I failed miserably for the most part at that. On the main road that runs mainly, well, horizontally, it runs horizontally through Orleans, or I guess if you look on a map it's a bit more like maybe diagonal, but that runs straight through the Orleans district is Innes Road, and down more towards the western end, but still somewhat in the center of, or close to the center of, closer to central Orleans, there is the tiniest gas station I've ever seen. I'm not going to give any more context to that, so go watch that video if you want to see it. Another thing I will address here as well. I said in my second to last video the whole there's no such thing as ego death thing, which I absolutely believe. Logically, I believe. Scientifically. I said that the only way to commit actual ego death would be to die and kill yourself if your brain wasn't working, or, well, just to physiologically your body to shut down, which is true. I still believe that, but I should clarify there's actually a few ways other than that it could happen, not by you actively, well, psychologically trying to change that. Because mainly, okay, well, the main way would be to die, but the other ways, the only ways that you could actually commit ego death, I should be more clarified, is to either physically become deceased, to, well, 2 would be to have a lobotomy done to you, which I think many of you at least know the basis of what that now very much and thankfully shunned medical or surgical procedure is. And so either to be completely lobotomized, and then...
What's your content, bro?
Sorry, what?
What's your content? What are you talking about?
Just life in general.
Nice. You just have a little... That's sick, bro. I like that. How old are you?
I'm 18.
Fucking right, man. Keep going, man.
Thank you.
This world tell you how to make a world, man. I like that.
Thank you. Oh. That was very nice. Oh. Well, at least... Well, that uplifted my mood quite a bit. Yeah, that was very nice. Well, now I feel awkward if I shout, "You have a good rest of your day." I wanted to say something other than thank you, but... That was really nice. Anyway, if you become lobotomized, which is a procedure where they stick a needle up underneath your eyelid and through the actual cranial structure here in your skull, underneath the eye socket. Oh, fuck, forgot that I had eyeliner on. No, whatever, it didn't come off too much. Ow. Okay, now I poke myself in the eye. If I'm not careful, I'll give myself a lobotomy. They stick a prong of some kind up under your eyelid, through your eye socket, and tap a specific area of the frontal cortex, which is responsible for, well, sense of self and our egos, and also responsible for understanding of concepts, and also concepts of such as language, responsible for emotions such as, well, ability of empathy, emotions of happiness, sadness, technically dreariness as well, and it also is mainly responsible for the, well, triggering crying as well. Well, it triggers sadness, but anyway, and also happiness, and also, well, happiness and joyfulness are technically the same thing in somewhat. Anyway, really got to brush up on my neurology and psychology. I've been meaning to do that. Anyway, stick it in there to basically damage a piece of the frontal lobe to basically numb a lot of your senses, mainly for thinking purposes, or some form of emotional expression. Yeah. Anyway, oh yes, and if you can't tell, it's getting dark. I don't have a light. There's a light if you saw in the last video that I bought this new tripod. Set it up. It's a pain in the ass. Yeah, it's something. I literally cut the cord to the light, because I'm not going to be using the light. And also, I literally could not hook up this friggin' the camera clip without the goddamn light. So, yeah, that sucks. Anyway, this is literally 30 minutes long, and I haven't even started talking about what I wanted to talk about. Okay, and another thing, you're probably going to see a clip at the end of,
Oh, and also, or if you gain dementia and the atrophy started affecting your frontal lobe. So the only ways that ego death could happen is if you were to die, if you were to get a lobotomy, or as if there was to be massive damage from neural death to your frontal lobe, or mass atrophy caused by it, disrupting your sense of self, or mass lesions. Anyway, another thing I'll say is well, you'll probably see, I'm going to put a clip on. I contemplated just deleting this clip, but you know what, fuck it. I said that I wasn't going to be focusing on, like, certain things, like what I mentioned in my Made It to Ottawa video, after what I talked about in that video, which I'm not, for the most part. I guess this maybe could be a form of hypocrisy on my part, where, well, if you know at certain points in my videos since then, whenever I see an off-road vehicle on the road, I've usually just been pointing it out, not in great detail, but just pointing it out. And I did. I'm gonna. Well, I don't make a promise. I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm not gonna. This is gonna be the last time, or I'll try to make it the last time that I've pointed out on camera that there was a fucking lawnmower going down, or more like it seemed to be a more industrialized lawnmower for hired out by companies, or that's mainly that are used by lawnmower companies that are hired for larger properties. It was going down the road, and I just thought, you know what, god damn it, I have to I'm gonna film this, because well, you'll see at the end. Maybe that's hypocritical of me by this point, but you know what, oh well. But, going away from this, a whole bunch of stuff that I could mention here, but you know what, I don't want to detract any more than I have from what the point of this video is supposed to be. And I'm sorry if you won't be able to see my face, but you're going to have to put up with that unless I actively move to a place that has a better light source to illuminate things, but there's not one around here. So, what this video is actually going to be about, so I'll say this, happy Halloween, because today is Halloween. Oh yeah, also happy 100 videos. This is the 100th video of my channel right now. Yeah. So there's that. I was going, because it's Halloween, and also I was gonna wear this makeup regardless whether it was Halloween or not, but I guess it'd be more fitting time. Well, I guess it was a better time to wear it out in public to do something like this. Even though I'm a bit more of a discreet location, I'm closer to literally the edge of Ottawa, the easternmost edge of Orleans, in a random park. It's just like, it's a dog walking park, mainly. But anyway, so I guess I won't get as many looks from people wearing this. I really don't care one way or another. I'm just saying it's, back when I was in Toronto and I've worn this makeup like this before, as I wore makeup similar to this in a skit of mine before. Well, I've gotten sneer remarks. I remember this one idiot, they said, I was walking into a coffee shop, and they're around my age, or appeared to be, and this it's actually on the last day that I was in high school before I dropped out. They're like, ew, emo, blah. And I'm actually not kidding. Like, they said it like that, literally with their gaggle friends, and just left. Yeah, that person seems to have some unresolved psychological issues, or possibly insecurities, or at the very least, they feel a sense of superiority of some kind, and it might make them feel better by putting others down for things that are non-problematic. Anyway, yeah, what I wanted to talk about here, actually, considering it's Halloween, was, well, actually, initially I was going to make this video about sharing stories that I've had, experiences that I haven't talked about on my travels so far in the last 5 months, since I left Toronto. There are just some interesting things that I could touch on. And I thought maybe I'd make that into a series, like however long I'm on this trek, this journey of mine that, well, I just make at certain intervals videos of me talking about just stuff that's happened that don't really maybe hold any like major significance in terms of like a theme of what I want to talk about, but just stories of things that happened to me. But I decided to hold off on that because, I actually thought it'd be good to talk about, considering relating, I guess, somewhat thematically to Halloween, relates to, well, I guess things that could be very scary. Well, it is scary in many regards, these things. It can be traumatic, or these, what I'm going to talk about is obviously in psychological terms used most often to, well, not most, it's used in intervals from people who are more sociopathic or who are more Machiavellian, I guess, as well, and, well, just manipulative all around to gain something for themselves, or it can just be done in everyday speech and we don't even know it. Like sometimes, well, what I'm going to talk about, actually, I should just say it, is different forms of manipulation. I actually thought that would be good to talk about. It is a little odd considering I'm just a dark figure floating with no face right now on the camera, but is there any way that there's lights? I mean, there's street lights over there, but yeah, fuck it. Nah. Should be fine for now. You're gonna have to put up with it. Just at the very least, maybe hear what I have to say. If you can watch YouTubers that literally just have just a drawn persona character for their fucking commentary, you can watch just shadows in the night talking about shit. Anyway, so manipulation. We just talked about this. So I'll just preface right now. Even though I have said before multiple times on this channel that I love researching things relating to psychology, neurology, sociology, culture, geography, all the sorts, and philosophy, I'm obviously not practicing in the medical or psychiatric field, so even though I disagree with certain realms of licensing, just as a concept for certain things, I'm not active in that practice for treating people, like, on a daily basis. So don't just, what I'm going to say here, it can be used as advice for things that you could look out for in your daily life. But if you feel that someone is being heavily manipulative towards you, don't just, well, obviously you want to use what I'm going to say here as like a basis for like figuring it out, which I recommend you do your own research on it and actually think, like critically think and assess the situation. Yeah, that's completely fine. But in terms of, well, if you're talking to, say, if you have a personal psychologist or psychiatrist and things of the sort, and you suspect that you could be under heavy manipulation, I would, or if you suspect that you yourself could be a heavy manipulator and might not fully realize it, or maybe this helps you maybe self-reflect a bit more and realize, am I being very encroaching and, like, well, am I trying to use methods to seek my own gain from someone close to me? Well, all I can recommend is that you talk to your psychological, a psychological care caregiver, just your psychologist or anything of the sorts, for something of the matter, or again, just self-reflect. So, yeah, I guess I'll just get into it with highlighting that. First, actually, you know what? I'm gonna take a minute to think, because maybe if I use certain, like, facial expressions, it might be better to get into place with more light. So, just hold on 1 minute while I just ponder that. Alright, okay. Yeah, that's better. I moved out of the dog park. And I'm actually back in the park that I was in when I filmed the Made It to Ottawa video. Anyway. Manipulation. I want to talk about it because I feel that many people don't really... Well, there's either many people don't know what to look for in terms of what could be manipulative tactics and behaviors, but also, well, even people who do know about manipulative tactics only really maybe know about a handful of them, or forms. They maybe only know, maybe like majorly know about 2 or 3 different, well, forms of manipulation, which, granted, that it's not like there's a whole load that can't be grouped, like, well, ones that can't be, tactics that can't be grouped into, like, under one label, or similar enough to be grouped under one label, but right here, and I may be missing a few, from everything I tried to research about it, to brush up on. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 major forms, or, well, 7 that are, okay. 4 of them are very common forms of manipulation. 3 of them are less common, and or at least they're considered to be less common, even though, now that I'm logically thinking about it, the last one I have on here, which I talked about in my fourth part of exploring Ottawa, it's considered to be the rarest form of manipulation. I'm actually starting to think that that's not true. Actually, from logically thinking about it, I think it's odd to be considered that, because I actually would say a lot of people in higher power, such as, say, politicians, policing forces, healthcare systems for certain people in healthcare systems, or just public officials and company board members, or just advertising agencies of the sort, or basically, well, just companies in general use this tactic in certain regards a lot, or at least in some essence they use it. But I think I'll edit, like, leave the names of them up for certain portions of the video, and I may actually put timestamps for this video, as I did with some of my other ones a while back, just so that you can, like, skip to them and hear me talking about them. Okay, so just getting into it off the bat, off the bat, even though I just discussed some of it, well, what is manipulation? I guess it's a set of tactics or behaviors that are used by a person or a group of people to try and gain, basically, well, try and gain something for themselves.
Is
That you? I don't know who you are, but I love you.
Thank you.
Like,
Oh. This is turning out to be a very nice evening, for the most part. God, I wish I said something more than thank you. Anyway. God, this is already getting on. Haven't even gotten to the main point. Anyway, manipulation. Set of tactics or behaviors used by individuals or a group of people to gain benefit for themselves, or mainly only benefit for themselves or for their rhetoric, whatever it may be, or just to try and swing something in their favor, is the best way I can put it. To gain benefit for themselves. Now, why I stress I'm not going to say problematic. Most often in major forms of manipulation, it is problematic. I don't say problematically because, as I said before, we are all really just in human nature in many regards, and certain traits and tendencies that we have in terms of our personalities can be more manipulative. Or even just like in general conversation, something can be, well, it can be the way we phrase something, or how we're trying to, say, make our point come across, you can be using, and it's most often subconsciously, some form of manipulation. Not always not overtly manipulative, but it's in some small form manipulative. But anyway, so that's just my basic, very simplified version of what manipulation is right here. So now let me actually get into the different forms of manipulation. Yeah, just, I guess, so that you can use this information, well, just to help you try and recognize it a bit better in your daily life. Okay, so the first one I'm going to start off with, which is, I would easily say, the most well-known form of manipulative behavior, or form of manipulation tactic, is that of gaslighting. So I'm pretty sure, like, I would say, even if you don't know much about, like, psychology, or don't heavily research psychology yourself, I guarantee you in some form, especially nowadays, a lot of people are familiar at least with the term gaslighting, or have heard it to some degree, and seen it being put into use in some degree. Well, what is gaslighting? Well, okay, first let me say let me say what it is. Gaslighting is basically when someone tries to subvert your thinking, or tries to subvert your thinking process and your memory, by convincing you that you are doing something when in actuality you're not doing that thing at all. It's the best way I can put it. Basically trying to convince you that, and it most often relates to memory, trying to convince you that your memory is wrong when it isn't, or that you are doing something in the moment when there is clear evidence or proof that you are not doing that. So, and if you're curious as to where the term in psychology, the term gaslighting, why this form of manipulation was given the term gaslighting, well, basically it was named after a film from the 1930s. Yes? The 1930s or the 1940s, I believe it was the 1930s. The film was called Gaslight. I haven't personally seen it. I've actually have been curious for a long while to watch it. But the term was coined after that film called Gaslighting. Basically, the plot of that film was a disgruntled husband was trying to, again, this is me paraphrasing on the plot, but something to do with his wife, who had a large sum of either like inheritance, like money of some kind or something. There was something that the wife had, and the disgruntled husband actively, who obviously was sociopathic in some regard and didn't care about his wife and was easily more egotistical, from just the description of the plot, tries actively convincing her that she is losing her mind, or, well, going clinically insane, or that she's delusional, by constantly turning off the gas-powered lighting in their house, because at the time they only had a lot of, in the story, and also I guess in particular with, well, being the 1930s, even when in-house light bulbs, electrical powered light bulbs were just starting to kick off, mainly in households. Well, that, again, though, that was, if it was the 30s, that would be during the Great Depression, but anyway, trying to convince his wife that she is losing her sanity and or becoming psychotic, in some way delusional, with her beliefs that by turning off like the gas-powered lamps and gas-powered lanterns in the house that she had put on initially, or turned on, that she's losing her mind, that someone is turning them off, she's crazy, and therefore he should be trusted with her inheritance, basically. Basically just trying to distort her memory of the events that happened, to make it seem like she is losing her sense of recollection, of memory recall, or that she's doing, or even, well, I haven't seen the film, so I don't know, maybe he was trying to convince her that, like, I think you're turning off the lights in the house, or that you're turning off the gas-powered lighting, and she's trying to give evidence that she isn't, but he's saying, no, you are, even though there would be no proof, and he's just, this is where the term gaslighting came from. So, anyway, so that's what gaslighting is. Gaslighting is trying to distort, it most often, like I said, relates to memory, but it could also, so most often relates to memory where someone is trying to purposefully, or not even purposely, that's more problematically, sometimes people don't even realizing that they're doing it. In fact, actually, I'd say in terms of gaslighting, people do it on a daily basis, really, and don't even know it, or aren't even trying to do so, but they just blurt out like, oh, you're doing this, like, you're doing that, and really, well, they're not, and you're like, no, I'm not doing that, and that would be technically the slight form of gaslighting. I'm guilty of doing that before, if, like, and obviously it comes a time when you admit when you're wrong, but I'm guilty of, I guess, in some small form, well, not even I guess, yes, it would be, guilty of small form of gaslighting, even if you are correct in some regard, or maybe you have like a hunch, or there's evidence that this could be happening, you don't have the exact evidence and you're still just like in a fit of rage or something, or if you're getting very precise about what's happening, like, oh, this is happening, or this is what you're doing, but then you're just like, well, the other person's like, no, it's not, here's the evidence for that. But anyway, in terms of major gaslighting, distortion of memory, or in a conversation trying to convince someone that they have done this. Let's say, okay, let's use an argument as an example. If someone has done this thing that they're upset about, trying to convince someone that they've done this thing that they're upset about, that this other person is upset about. Even though, given by what you're saying, there is very clear evidence that you did not do that, or that right now, if they're trying to blame you for doing something in the conversation in the moment, there is clear evidence that is not the case of what's happening. But they're constantly just repeating that, no, you are doing this, and not really giving any real definitive proof for that. So, what's that? And again, I'm using this argument and example, so how would I apply this, like, in terms of putting it into acting it out? Okay, say someone, actually, you know what? Here, I'll use an example that I've experienced, actually, of gaslighting. This is one of the key moments I experienced of major gaslighting from people I knew before. There was an incident where I came back to a household that I was living in before, wearing, evidently, this exact makeup. And it surprised someone in that household. And they accused me of... They got into a fit because of some things that were going on between me and them. But in that moment, they accused me of purposely wearing this makeup just to come home and shock them and surprise them, basically. With no clear evidence given that that's what I was doing, and I'm saying it right now, that is not what I was doing. I wore the makeup because I wanted to have something that, well, I enjoyed wearing it. I wear it because it makes me feel nice to wear it. I enjoyed the look of it on my face. That's a bit of my own self-interest there, and it's not harming anyone else. Me just wearing this. At least in my opinion, it's not. So I do it just to make myself feel a little dolled up at points. Again, this can relate to what I talked about in the last video at points where my gender expression would be a bit more, I guess, like I said, has many aspects of transgenderism. Or maybe, no, I hesitate to say non-binary because because my actual traits that I personify in terms of my personality don't actively, it's not really a mix of more masculine and feminine traits. I would say like most of my gender expression traits are more towards the masculine side. Anyway, but this is definitely an aspect of it. Anyway, now it might be because this person seems to have some subconscious, or they have subtle, what I would consider subtle transphobia, or they might, well, yes, I would consider it, well, certain things they've said in the past is subtly transphobic in certain regards. Now, looking back on it more so reflectively, I mean, I've had major issues with this person, but anyway, so, but anyway, they, back to the gaslighting. They accused me of purposefully wearing makeup to just shock them, get a rise out of them, basically. Basically just to disturb them. I don't know if that has anything to do with my makeup just being black color, or if just they would have been disturbed with me wearing any sort of makeup, facial products in general. I don't know. And that's not me accusing them of being subtly racist, which well, after being with them for a while, no, not really. They're not really subtly racist. Subtly homophobic and transphobic, that's definitely, well, that can be apparent, but anyway, so they accused me of this, and I was given clear evidence that no, this is not what I'm doing. I wore it because I wanted to just pretty up my face a bit. I just wanted to wear it for fun, because I enjoy doing it. And I don't depend on wearing makeup to have, well, to be happy with my appearance, which I think is, well, I think that's unhealthy, but anyway, but again, they just kept accusing me of doing it purposely to shock them. I got into a whole argument and kerfuffle with them and another person in that household. And yeah, it, well, let's just say the rest of the day didn't go well. It didn't go very well. But that would be a form of gaslighting. What they were doing, trying to actively, well, again, for how flawed I think people are, this person is problematic. I don't know if they really realized what they were doing or not, but obviously I wasn't just going to lie down and take it. It was very, very encroaching to a problematic extent. And basically, well, that's just an example of gaslighting. But now let me use a different example. What could be another example of gaslighting? Well, okay. Okay, here's a bit more of a, I guess, relating to relationships again, because I don't want to try and, I don't want to use, like, I was going to use, like, the analogy of, like, oh, you stole my gloves. No, I didn't. There's clear evidence that I didn't steal my gloves, but no, you did. You absolutely did. You're stealing them right now, or something like that. I'm not going to use that example because I actually want to keep this a bit more, like, I want to try and use a bit more examples that are more realistic to what is most commonly experienced by people who are, well, manipulated. So let's use another relationship example. Say someone is in a relationship and their partner is very, well, verbally abusive, or they're very egotistical, they're very, wow. What personality disorder should I go with? Narcissistic personality disorder or attention-seeking personality disorder? Which one should I go with? Oh, okay, actually here, maybe, here's one. I have more traits of borderline, well, have more borderline traits, or maybe full-blown borderline personality disorder, which, for those of you who don't know what borderline personality disorder is, it's basically mass mistrust. A mass mistrust in people in general, or just something. You have an overbearing mistrust of a lot of things in your life, and you personify that in your personality, and it most often is seen, like, in terms of, like, the problematic side of borderline personality disorder in relationships, but specifically mainly romantic or sexual relationships in some way. But anyway, and in terms of usually in relationships, it usually relates to the mistrust, and this isn't the same as, a lot of people actually get schizoid personality disorder and borderline personality disorder confused. Schizoid is actively where you consciously or subconsciously are pushing people away from you, from forming close relationships with you. You try and actively, well, either you actively try to, or you subconsciously push people away from forming a close bond to you, often out of a subconscious fear of being severely emotionally hurt again. By, well, it usually, the personality disorder can be brought on by severe emotional trauma of you being repeatedly having your trust betrayed, or being or emotional manipulation, being hurt in some way emotionally. It can, well, that can relate to every, really, a multitude of psychological disorders, not just personality, but mental disorders, and, well, as well as it can, in some regards, behavioral disorders. But anyway, but with borderline personality disorder is it's not necessarily, it's not that you're trying to push them away. If anything, actually, you want, many times there are people who have borderline who want to actively keep a relationship with someone, but their thought process, or their personified thought process, cognitive state, will not allow them to break a certain, what's the word? Break. Oh God, come on right now with the goddamn word finding issues. It won't. They have a mass mistrust in people even that they favor greatly, like friends of theirs, or romantic partners of theirs, or platonically intimate partners of theirs, or family members of theirs. It really doesn't matter. Just people they interact with, they may want, as well, I logically feel all human beings in some form crave social interaction, or we're social beings, logically, I think. But anyway, but you actively don't allow, like, leeway with certain things in terms of trust towards a specific element of your life, or it can even be an object, different objects, personal belongings. That could really be more just borderline tendencies or traits. But in terms of the personality disorder relating to relationships, it most often stems from how it usually affects, how it usually manifests in a lot of, like, relationship issues. And again, it's not just romantic with this. It could be friendships, just sexual relationships, as mentioned, family ties, just relationships in general. It often stems from a very deep-rooted subconscious fear of abandonment, fear of, it's a very strange, like, strange duality. I'll explain that duality with manipulation, in gaslighting. You're basically, it often ends up the disorder ends up causing a lot of social disrupt in someone's life, because it inadvertently pushes the people that they want to keep close to them away. It pushes them away, emotionally. But anyway, I think you get the point of what I'm trying to say. But let's say that, let's go with this person as a partner who has heavy borderline traits or has borderline personality disorder. Or maybe let's throw in that they're a complete narcissist as well, thinking that they're infallible and perfect in many regards. Let's say this person actively causes, is verbally abusive to their partner. The one with the disorders is verbally abusive to their partner, causing them major disrupt, not allowing them to see specific friends because they're afraid that they'll gain more, give them more attention than them, or they'll desire to spend more time with them than this person, not wanting to go out, do social activities without them because they'll feel excluded, or just, and is also just overall is very controlling of their life. But they have had enough of it, this partner, and they actively try and bring it up to them, like, you are exerting overbearing authority over my life, and I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of it. You're verbally abusive as well. Anyway, they claim this stuff, and there's heavy evidence to back it up. This person with borderline personality disorder, or is a narcissist as well, will get defensive immediately, or is, I don't want to generalize that there. This person is getting defensive immediately, and they're saying, what are you talking about? I never do that. I never verbally abuse you. I'm so kind-worded to you. If anything, you constantly verbally attack me. You're doing it right now. You're verbally attacking me by accusing me of doing this. It's verbal assault. You're trying to just completely defame me, or you're really the one who's overbearing control over my life. You're boxing me in by You're boxing me in by, okay, let's say they label them with the disorder, like they're saying you are borderline, or you have very severe trust issues. You're also very narcissistic, and like, no, how dare you? You're harassing me right now. You're harassing me with this, and you are verbally harassing me right now by telling me I have this. If anything, you're trying to exert control over my life because I want to have you close with me. So you're just trying to exert control by going and spending time with these people or anything like that. You're trying to do that, and you're doing it right now. And then this person rebuttals with, no, I'm not. I'm merely talking with you right now about, I'm telling you, you seem to have these traits, these heavy traits of this disorder, or you're very much encroaching right now. Here's the evidence, is that you constantly say this to me, you demean me in this way. I could give you text messages of when I want to make plans with these people, but you were like, no, stop that. You shouldn't be doing that. So basically, what I'm saying is, this person is using gaslighting to convince them that they are doing something when they are clearly are not. And there's clear evidence that isn't the case. As well, it's not even as it appears to be. It's not the case. And they're actively trying to, like, they're trying to completely convince them that they're attacking them when they're not, that they're more controlling over them just for merely wanting to spend time with someone else for a bit when they're not. So basically, this, I think you get what I'm talking about here with gaslighting. Now, where it can get tricky though, is that moving away from that example, I know I went a bit more on like the whole disorder there in terms of personality, but moving away from that, in terms of like, in terms of not in terms of like major manipulation, there can be time. Well, actually, this can relate to it, but there can be times, and this is what I was talking about, how we're not even aware always if we're manipulating someone, or we're using a tactic that could be manipulative, is there can be times, especially in terms of people who have certain cognitive issues relating to memory, or even dementia patients, or people with dementia that is affecting their memory, or neurological disorders such as multiple sclerosis, and there's lesions closer to the hippocampus or prefrontal cortex that is causing cognitive dysfunction in some way, or just memory problems. It can get tricky to know who. There can be times in conversations where it's unclear, like, who is gaslighting who here, like, where you don't know that, like, and again, this could be intentional what the person is doing or not, where it's like, okay, let's say an example here. Two people were out drinking, heavily drinking. They got severely drunk, or were using recreational drugs to a severe extent, like cocaine or something like that. This isn't me putting down anyone who does drugs or anything like that. I'm just saying, let's say it's in some regard that they well, technically, well, I guess obviously, yes, cocaine, if you did a dubious amount of it, then you could black out. Overstimulation of, well, your neurocortex. Yes, I do believe you can black out on cocaine. But anyway, some sort of drug that you can black out on if you do a heavy dosage of it, or alcohol. Your memory blocks out certain events that happened after they transpired. They block out certain things that happened due to the overstimulation from the drink. And say two people, okay, let's say two people were drinking, had a night of fun. They were just having a nice night of fun. They got a little too much in them, and they both blacked out, and they were taken home by friends. The next day, they're like, and their memory might be a bit fuzzy from the night before. This is why I say I said I don't believe, well, even though it's not an excuse for abysmal shit committed during intoxication, the whole bullshit the philosophy of, like, well, there was a philosopher, like I said in my, I believe it was, it was a May to Ottawa video. I talked about some people I knew and getting drunk, something they said to me. I don't believe in the whole, like, alcohol does not and drugs don't create vice. It reveals vice or things like that, or sin. That's a load of rubbish. I'm sorry to tell you, that's way too, in my opinion, on my logical thought process, that is mystifying something that is a chemical reaction in the brain, and it is, yes, is that an excuse for what someone does while intoxicated? In major regards, no, and this is why I'm for criminal rehabilitation, but anyway. But people do not, if they are heavily intoxicated, in some regard, they don't have control over what they say or do. I'm sorry to say that, but that is, well, that's terrible human biology there. That's, well, we suck, as I've said before. Our biology sucks. Anyway, so their memory is a bit foggy from the night before, and they blacked out at a certain point. And, they maybe got into one of them remembers getting into an argument with someone, and the other one maybe has a vague memory of it, and they're like, hey, you said that really fucked up thing last night. Like, no, I didn't. And the other person's like, no, I didn't. You said that fucked up thing to me. Or, like, they're remembering something a bit differently, like, no, we were arguing and you said that fucking terrible thing to me. How dare you do that? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? You did that. And it's like, well, where's your proof for it? Well, okay, well, it's a bit foggy, but wait, did I say that? And then they remember, wait, but no, I thought you said this thing to me. And then they're like, no, I am, okay, well, now I'm getting a bit foggy here. I don't fully remember. Did I say that? And then they're both basically like, fuck, who said what here? Did we both even say that? And so basically, it's now like now you're wondering, well, like I just said, it becomes a mystery of who exactly, if one of them is right and the other is wrong, who is gaslighting who here? Or, well, even if they're both wrong, they're both accusing them of something without concrete proof. So it's just, who is doing the manipulation here unintentionally? Who is doing, like, are they both just gaslighting without any knowledge? That's where it can get confusing, is what I'm trying to say. What are we at? Yeah, we're at almost the hour-and-a-half mark. Okay, so I think you understand what I'm saying with that. That's gaslighting. So I just wanted to clear that up. So to summarize that, gaslighting is either unintentional or purposeful distortion of someone's memory in conversation, or trying to distort what they are doing, trying to convince them that they are, committing an act when they very much aren't. That they are doing something in conversation that is not the case of what they're actually doing. Or again, with memory, they are trying to distort or are, without knowing it, distorting what happened, and it's like confusing you, like trying to just distorting your memory in some way. And yeah, that's gaslighting. Okay. The next one I want to talk about is blame shifting. So yeah, I would say not as much as gaslighting, but I would say that in some form that people have heard this. I'd say fairly a lot of people have probably heard this term before, at least in some context. Maybe not as much in the general populace as like gaslighting, again with how much more that's being talked about nowadays, but in some form, I would say. But oh, it's getting a bit cold. Anyway, so blame shifting. What is that? Well, it's that one's a bit more self-explanatory in terms of that. Oh yes, that's one I forgot to write. That's the one I forgot. Got that one. Let's hope I remember to talk about that. The other form of manipulation. Shit. Okay. Anyway, that's one I forgot to write down. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 other ones. Okay, so blame shifting, as the title suggests, it's shifting the blame of something to something else. Most often, in terms of major problematic manipulation, unfoundedly shifting it to something else. But this can even be said for just in conversation, like it can be done not to a severe extent where you're saying, oh well, no, I didn't, hey, this wasn't entirely my fault, this thing, the power was out or something when I did that, or you hit your hand and someone's like, good going. I was like, well, I didn't fucking try to hit the table, shouldn't have been here in the first place. It was something along those lines. That was a bit more okay. Just blame shifting is what I'm getting. Title, self-explanatory somewhat. But again, this can get to a problematic extent in certain regards. So what are examples of problematic blame shifting? Okay, this actually relates here. I'm going to use one that I've actually, someone I wanted to talk about a bit. There's a whole lot more discussion, I guess, well, there has been for a long, in the last decade and going into this one as well, 2010's decade more so, there's been discussion of, like, well, victim blaming for, well, someone having gone through a traumatic experience and being the victim of something, and also, what the fuck was that? I think that was a bird that just flew by that way. And also what I guess people would call victim accountability. Now, I know that's a very controversial term in many regards, but I think I want to explain what I would consider to be more victim accountability. So, do I believe that many people in this world are traumatized? Yes. But do I believe that that is, in a logical sense, an excuse to carry out really problematic behaviors because you yourself have gone through trauma and have, well, either internalized it or are acting it out? No, I don't think that's very fair. I don't. So, if someone, what I would consider victim accountability is if someone is doing something very detrimental and problematic, and them taking accountability for their actions, and apologizing and trying to rectify, like trying to reconcile what they've done and, I guess, fix their behavior, that is victim accountability. And then in terms of what would relate to, well, what would be someone, the difference between victim shaming or victim blaming and victim accountability would be, okay, if someone was, say, the victim of verbal abuse and then they themselves became verbally abusive, victim accountability would be if that person that they're harming with their verbal abuse actively says, hey, you are being a complete demeaning, dehumanizing, verbally aggressive moron right now. You are very much, well, you're being dismissive and you're being, well, heavily, you're being aggressive, one, in terms of verbal abuse. You're being a horrible person, basically. That's what I would, and they actually like are like, oh my god, you're right, I'm sorry about this. That is victim accountability in my opinion. Victim blaming would be if someone said that I was verbally abused for a long time and things of the regard, and someone else was to say, well, you deserved it. It seems like you deserved it. It seems like your parents deserved to verbally abuse you, and also just like completely demean you in many ways. You seem like you deserved it for no like actual founded reason. That is what I would consider to be victim blaming. Anyway, though, in regards to blame shifting, let's say in this whole what I'm talking about between these two things here, let's say that let's say somebody and I guess in my past as well, I guess there have been points where I'm guilty of when I was more toxic, manipulative asshole to, well, yeah, I actually would say to one of my former romantic partners and one of their friends, which I've talked about, I am guilty of using, I guess, blame shifting in some regard. My memory is foggy of that, but I'm pretty sure I was. And I guess gaslighting, so, well, yeah, that sucks. I still greatly regret that. Anyway, and as I feel I should, anyway, what could be used is, like, say somebody, say somebody is overly domineering to someone. They have a domineering behavioral disorder, and they're constantly trying to exact force over someone or be completely in control over their life. And well, I guess similar to hey, you could use that relationship example that I brought up before. Anyway, they're overly domineering, they're exacting overbearing control over someone's life, and someone brings it up to them saying, you have domineering behavioral disorder, you are, and let's just throw in there that they also are overly aggressive, like not physically aggressive, but just verbally they are very aggressive, like they're just emotionally abusive, let's say, and they're like, hey, you're doing this, please stop, here's the clear evidence for it. And they're like, yeah, okay, fine, I do this, yeah, but it's not my fault, okay? I was abused as a child. My parents, they divorced when I was very young, and I grew up in a rough household, and so I'm not responsible for turning out this way. I'm which maybe, obviously, I don't think that's, I think people can change, but obviously people might not know any better, and they might be ignorant to certain things, and they internalize something, so maybe it's not entirely their fault for turning, it's not their fault for turning out that way, but it's their fault for actually causing the problems that they are causing. So, or at least logically I would feel, but basically, like, they're coming up with all these reasons for why they are the way they are, why they've turned out this way, and they're actively aware. Let's say in this instance that they're actively aware that, sorry, there's just a car pulling into the parking lot. They're actively aware that of what they're doing. They're aware of what they're doing, and they and not only are they aware, they're admitting to it. They're admitting to doing this, but they're just like, no, it's not my fault, because I have a traumatic past, basically. Well, that is blame shifting. You are shifting the form of manipulation here. You're shifting the blame to something else, which, though you may be right, that person may be right that yes, this is how they turned out that way, it's not, in my opinion, a good, well, it's not a good excuse. It's not a good reason to keep detrimenting someone else, basically. So yes, that might be the reason you turned out that way, but you're not taking accountability for your actions because of that. You have done this, and you're just blaming what you did on what turned you into this thing that made you do this. You're not actively taking responsibility for your part. So so that's what I would consider blame shifting in major regards in terms of manipulation. The blame shifting is used so much in very well, in a lot of political tactics, in many regards. Okay, let's use here as a political, well, here's a political example. The war in Ukraine right now, and Vladimir Putin is, well, he's blame shifting a lot, in my opinion, actively saying that, the reason, I'm not going to divulge like entirely specifics here, but in many regards he tends to blame a lot of the Russian army's failings on American or Western influence or your other European influence, or blame it on Ukraine sabotaging things of theirs and things of the sorts, or at least from what I remember, when I've been keeping up with the issues in Ukraine, hearing about it, that, and then not actively taking account for, well, their ill preparedness in many regards. That is blame shifting. What's another example? Politics, I guess. Let's say, okay, the Haitian government in Haiti, for years has been heavily corrupt, in my opinion, and most often is because of years of, well, colonial and imperialist interference from America, and, well, CIA involvement in certain things, and just destroying their culture and things of the sort, and imposing, like, a capitalist economy on them. And you get the point of what I'm trying to say in that regard. But they actively, though, are not doing, the Haitian government is not doing anything really to help their people, at least in my opinion, economically, rebound in any sort of major form. A lot of times, from what I've kept up, well, from months ago when I was actually looking into it, often blame shifting, like, just on the, well, yes, this is true that the world economy plays a part in how terrible their economy has gotten, because I just think, in my opinion, the entirety of capitalism is a horror show in many regards. But anyway, but their government does not, in my opinion, actively try and help with social programs for their people, doesn't actively try and change their country's economy in any major fashion, it seems, and are blame shifting most of their problems on the exterior world, which, yes, is true from years of, well, societal interference from other foreign governments, and also, well, cultural destruction and things of the sort, and destruction of their people's heritage, but that's not an excuse for you to carry out and continue on the trauma if you get what I mean. Again, anyway, that was just my stance on, I guess, political blame shifting to something else, where even if there is a case to be made for, like, yes, this is how this thing came to be, but you're still actively contributing to making it worse without actually trying to change it. You're not trying to do something, even if it's, and I get it, people have their, and I've said, people have selfish tendencies where they have their own self-interest too, so they don't want to start a whole revolution in politics, but you're not trying in even the smallest way, even with your own self-interest, to try and make things better in some way or change it if you are causing this problem or you're complaining about it, I guess. But anyway, so those could be examples of blame shifting. What would be one that, okay, 39, I guess, 1 hour and 39 minutes so far. So what's an example though of small level? Well, I gave an example of small level blame shifting, but I guess, well, what's, I guess, another example of, like, just major shifting? Or well, not even, I guess, what would be, like, I guess, maybe non-problematic blame shifting, that we would use in a lot of conversations daily? Well, I guess in non-problematic blame shifting, technically, if you're blaming something, then you are putting the blame on that thing. So I guess in that regard, it could be some form of blame shifting. But anyway, I think you get the point with that one. Blame shifting, taking the blame, the accountability on yourself that is rightfully on yourself, and you are taking the accountability of something for this thing, and you're shifting it to something else, in whatever fashion. Usually in terms of major manipulation, to just deflect any, well, blame to yourself, or to, well, just to deflect any to deflect the responsibility of that thing being put on you, in certain regards. So yeah, that's definition there of blame shifting. Okay, the next one would be, guilt tripping. And more specifically, though, with this one, I'm going to go with, in terms of the problematic forms of what I see as problematic, in terms of major manipulation relating to guilt tripping, is baseless guilt tripping, or unfounded guilt tripping. Because I actually do think, in some regard, in terms of, like, discussion, that this manipulation tactic is actually a good thing in terms of guilt tripping. And I guess you could call this, well, no, this would be in correlation with guilt tripping. Anyway, so what is guilt tripping? Guilt tripping is trying to guilt someone, or cause someone to feel either some level of guilt or shame for an action that they've done, trying to actually make them feel bad about it, and put the guilt of something, like, make them have a sense of guilt for their actions. Guilt tripping. So this is a form of manipulation. And why I say that, yeah, guilt tripping, trying to shame, using what can used in correlation with it is shaming, usually, often. You're trying to make someone feel ashamed for something that they've done, and trying to get them to feel, remorse. Well, not even, I guess, well, it doesn't really have to be remorse, just trying to make them feel guilty. They're trying to make them feel a sense of guilt for their actions, which, again, guilt tripping is, again, I guess this title is also pretty self-explanatory, I guess. So, yeah. But, again, where I'm going to get into what I feel is more problematic than just labeling guilt tripping as bad. I don't think it's actually inherently entirely bad. What I think is bad is baseless guilt tripping. So, anyway, so what's an example of guilt tripping? So, let's use an example of, let's use a problematic example, what I consider to be a problematic example or a detrimental example of guilt tripping. Say there is someone who is, who's very upset. Okay, say you have someone who is who's doing something that's they're trying to do something nice for someone. They're trying to and okay, this is more, I guess, specifically baseless guilt tripping. They're trying to make, let's say someone's birthday is coming up, and in most North American cultural traditions, they're in relation to a lot of, well, yeah, just would it be considered more, I guess, white North American cultural traditions. Well, no, this has been adapted by other cultures in North America as well, and it's not specific to one race. So, just culturally North American, there, or even some form Western European, British culture too, and also in Oceania, they're baking a cake for and obviously baking it for celebratory reasons is common in other cultures all across the world. I'm just saying cake specifically, like a standardized birthday cake, what is considered a standardized birthday cake in terms of North American culture. They're baking a cake for someone for their birthday to cheer them up because they have been feeling very dreary recently. They've been feeling very depressed, and they think that it'll cheer them up, and there's maybe evidence that it'll cheer them up. But then someone else says to them, no, this isn't a good idea, and you're gonna make them feel worse for this. They want to be left alone. You're gonna cause them to feel even more depressed. They want to be left alone, and you're gonna make them feel horrible for this. And I guess this relates to gaslighting as well. You're gonna make them feel a lot worse for this. By doing this, you're gonna intrude on them, and you should really be thinking twice about this. You should be feeling, or if you went ahead and did it, you're like, they're just pretending that they actually enjoyed that. You should feel ashamed of yourself that you did that, because they clearly didn't want it, and you should feel bad about doing this. You should feel remorse for doing this. Well, there may be no evidence that they actively didn't want company during this time in their life when they were in a very depressive state, and just a nice gesture for their birthday. And they're like, well, no, there isn't, no one has ever said that they didn't want to hang out or that they might enjoy some company during this time. I thought it would be nice, and when I gave it to them, there was nothing that indicated this cake to them. There was nothing that indicated that they felt unwell by it. And maybe they're masking their feelings, but they seem to be genuinely happy by that. They seem to be more uplifted by it, by us doing this, by me doing this thing for them, or if it's a group of people, us doing this thing for them. So I don't get where you're coming from here. It seems like you're just, like, there's evidence that's not, but then this person keeps going on like, no, it's so clear that you just disrupted them entirely. How could you do this? Like, it's completely unreasonable of you to do this, and then you're like, well, now okay, there is evidence that it could not be. So this is seeming like you're trying to guilt trip me into just completely feeling horrendous about what I've done, even though there's evidence that I could have, like, this could have been helpful. And it doesn't seem like you're willing to listen to that, and it just seems like you're trying to guilt me into feeling like, to apologizing to them for no reason, or say if they're like, well, do you want me to apologize to them? Like, no, just, you're awful for this, like, how could you do this? And they're like, well, okay, now it doesn't seem like you actually want any resolution to this. You just, or like, you don't want anything to be resolved, like, you don't want me to try and resolve it in any way, so you just want me to feel very bad about it, and just completely feel guilty for no reason, and you're getting very, very passionate about a cake for some goddamn reason, even though there's nothing, it's not like they're allergic to cake or anything. No, this isn't a specific example from my life. No, it's not. This one isn't a specific example. I'm conjuring this up out of the air from my ass. I'm farting out of my ass and just conjuring. I'm using my goth drag queen drug dealer powers to fucking... This video is a mess. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. I'm making this bullshit up, like the examples. I'm not... Okay, you get what I'm saying. Anyway, point being, is what I would consider to be a form of baseless guilt tripping. It's not, there's really no evidence for it. Now, though, where I'm going to get into this is why I think actually just overall, guilt tripping, the manipulation tactic of guilt tripping, or the form manipulation of guilt tripping, isn't really inherently bad from my opinion, is because unfortunately, if you are trying to actually, if someone is causing a serious problem, the only way to really get them to, like, reflect on themselves and actually assess the situation, and one of the only ways that might be to get, well, it really is to, like, get them to realize what they're doing to you or someone else, is to, in a sense, guilt trip them. Like, you're to say, hey, you're doing this, you should feel awful about, like, obviously you can't tell them, well, from my moral stance, I wouldn't say you could tell them how to, you can't obviously tell someone how to feel, but, like, saying, hey, this is causing a problem, you're doing this, here's the evidence, you're mucking this up for me and everyone else, and it's really causing a lot of major problems, and it's not doing you any, well, it might be doing you good, but it's causing a lot of major detriment, and this is a really awful thing. Please realize that. Like, this is awful. This is a problem. You are causing this problem. This is bad. Maybe you should have some remorse for what you're doing, empathy for others in that regard, and also, like, realize what you're doing here and regret that decision and maybe actively try and fix it. That is what I would consider actually helpful guilt tripping. I think you get what I mean. Like, I don't think guilt tripping in and of itself is a problem. Baseless guilt tripping is a problem. But, well, that bleeds into the issue of how do you realize what is baseless or not. Well, you have to critically think, or try to critically think. That's really all you can do. And look at the evidence that is provided for that scenario. Am I doing this should I feel bad about this because of how much it's affecting someone else, or if it's affecting me in this way as well, should I feel very bad about this? So that is like you reflecting on yourself, and that could be because someone was guilt tripping you in a sense, like, hey, this is causing you're doing this to this person, it's awful, you're causing so much destruct. That's guilt tripping. But again, like I said, there's the baseless guilt tripping, which is, okay, just again, to put this in simplest terms, guilt tripping is just in and of itself is trying to induce a sense of like remorse, a sense of guilt into someone for something that they have done, and often, well, using tactics such as shaming for it, like to make them feel guilty, or you could, in what would be a more problematic way of guilt tripping someone, I'd say, would be belittling them. Well, I guess, well, not even that. Like, again, belittling, I guess, if you're actively angry at someone, and rightfully angry, in my opinion, would be helpful. Like, hey, you're kind of like a very intrusive and detrimental person. Get help. Like, that is technically belittling, or like you have these issues and you're being an asshole, you're being encroaching, you're being detrimental. So I guess that is belittling. But anyway, tactics of shaming, belittling, here though is what I would consider very much a problematic like add-on to guilt tripping, like a way of inducing it, would be or initiating it would be dehumanizing someone, which, well, I think that's overall just disgusting in general. Dehumanization, whatever regard it is. Like, sincerely, if you're sincerely dehumanizing someone, not if you're like trying to tell a joke or be stupid or telling a story relating to dehumanization. It's just, if you're sincerely like dehumanizing someone, then I think that is very, well, detrimental. Anyway, so, but, and in terms of baseless, guilt tripping would be trying to induce a sense of guilt or remorse into someone for actions that they are doing or have done, and well, there being no real evidence that they actually, well, there's no evidence that they've done that, or that this emotional reaction that they're having is really okay. Here's, I guess, the more a bit of a differentiation, a better differentiation between gaslighting and guilt tripping is, with guilt tripping, this person who is upset at it might be having a bit more of an overreaction to what they did than is warranted for the scenario, which would, I guess, be more baseless guilt tripping. Whereas with gaslighting, you don't have to be trying to make someone feel guilty for what you're accusing them of doing, or like trying to make them feel guilty for, well, you distorting their memory and them not fully, you might not be trying to make someone feel guilty with that, but you are trying to distort like their cognitive sense of memory recall, and their in terms of like in the moment during a conversation, you're trying to accuse them of something, or you're saying that they are doing this with no evidence. You might not be trying to make them feel guilty for it, but you're still, well, that's what I would consider to be the differentiation. The difference between gaslighting, and guilt tripping. And again, I'm going to say, just like everything in psychology, it all really, most often, these things, these social interactions, and also just our emotional states, are things relating to our emotional states, it all bleeds over into one another, really. In fact, and I believe it's kind of like how in terms of, well, brain health, how neurology and psychology heavily bleed into each other, as they're both neurosciences. I'd actually, and I believe I might have mentioned this in one of my earlier videos on this journey, that I honestly am at a point where I pretty well believe that, I think that, and this doesn't mean that the field of psychology is any less important than it is. I feel it's beyond important for understanding human nature and just the nature of living things with functioning brain structures, but and emotional states. But I'd go as far as to say that psychology is just, well, is a subspecialty or a very specified field of neurology, because it is effects of, well, it's metaphysical effects mainly of our brain structures relating to specific areas of the brain as well. Just the emotional states of our, well, the emotional state, otherwise known as the psychological state of the psyche, is controlled by our nervous system. That is absolutely true. And also, though, in the more metaphysical sense, it has, where neurology is physiological, psychology also relates to social interaction with our emotional states and things of the sort. That also relates to sociology, but anyway. And philosophy, but anyway. Because in my opinion, everything relates to everything in some small or large way. But anyway. So what I was saying with that is, a lot of manipulation tactics, there can be many instances where they bleed over into each other. And in relation, in terms of breaking apart psychology and what is usually the formats of, and I talked about this before, before leaving the cottage videos at one point, how psychology can mainly be broken up into 3 categories: mentality, personality, and behavioral. And though, yes, there are specific traits and disorders or specific attributes to all of them, they most often, in every facet really, they merge, they bleed over with one another. It's not like you can't. Okay, most often, as what's usually said, is if you have a personality disorder, you most likely have another personality disorder, or at least heavy traits of another personality disorder, or of a behavioral disorder in many regards, or you have a behavioral disorder, or in certain regards you may also have, if you have a mental disorder, you might also have a behavioral disorder, or vice versa. It all bleeds in. I'll talk more about that in a different time, but anyway, with manipulation, it most often, there's a lot of merging of, like, these tactics, consciously or subconsciously. There's a lot of, like, combination of them, especially in problematic instances. Okay, so that's the explanation of guilt tripping. The next one I'm going to talk about, where are we at? Yeah, we're getting to 2 hours. Next one I want to talk about, okay, so the next 2 are 2 that are probably ones that people don't usually know about. Whereas the first 3 that I just talked about are a bit more, I guess, well, blame shifting and guilt tripping, a bit more of self-explanatory labeling there in terms of their names. But those 3, gaslighting, blame shifting, and guilt tripping, probably are more well known in, like, the major populaces of the world in most societies. in some fashion or another. Even if you, I should clarify, even if you don't know, even though I said the terms are being heard more, especially with gaslighting, a lot of people know the term. Even if you don't know the terms for those three, you've most likely, know how to recognize, or not know how to recognize, this is video, you've had some encounter, you might be more familiar with recognizing those three forms of manipulation better than the next two, I'm going to say. Because the behaviors, I guess, are a bit more well-known, I guess, or what's acted out. But the next form of manipulation I want to talk about is strawmanning. So that might be an unfamiliar term to some people, but it is a bit more well-known, I guess, in some regard in political commentary, mainly, I guess, political commentary communities on social media or on the internet, or just in, relating back to politics, it's a manipulation tactic that is heavily used in government or governmental administrations, or especially during election seasons. If your country has, whether it's a more democratic system of public elections, or if it's some form of governmental election where the election is held by the government and controlled by the government in more of a dictatorly fashion, whatever it is, this one is used quite often in political debate, or just debate in general. Now, I don't even want to, I guess, well, yes, in argument too, but anyway, this one, I guess, is people more so in political commentary realms are more familiar with strawmanning. So, what is strawmanning? I guess there might be some disregard. This is pretty pointlessly gendered, calling it strawmanning. Again, I'm not going to police my words on that. I don't think the word strawmanning is the most, for as much as I believe in, I don't believe it should be policed political correctness in terms of your wording, but should you be more actively wanting to be more inclusive with your words? I would say yes. That's why I try and say they if I don't know someone's gender. Again, the whole assuming gender thing is, I've talked about before, I guess I've talked about in some degree that I think it's not, I don't think there'd be much of a problem if someone misgenders you and then you politely correct them, and then if they just didn't know, because unfortunately many people don't know, just politely correct them, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna actively try and work on not saying he or she or whatever their pronouns are. I'll try and say they, or if they misgender them as they, say, oh no, my pronouns are he, she. Anyway, but if they repeatedly are just trying to egg you on and trying to purposely misgender you, then that is a problem, and I think that is, well, that's a very scummy thing to do. I think a lot of people would share my sentiment on that in some regard. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, so if you want to be more, I guess, politically correct with the naming of that, let's give it the name, strawing, I guess we could call it, or not, well, maybe not strawing. Let's say, strawlining. Let's call it strawlining. So either term strawmanning or strawlining. Just for general context here, for people who do know the term, I guess I'll say strawmanning, but you can refer to it, I guess, maybe I'll start referring to it as strawlining, in terms of psychological manipulation. So, strawmanning or strawlining. What is that? Okay, so strawmanning is where in an argument or a debate, someone takes, you present an argument, let's say, or someone presents an argument. They present a case or something. They completely take all the context out of what you said. They either look at the context or they don't look at the context, and they just completely misrepresent it, or they purposefully take the context out of it, and they try to spin the argument as if you said something completely different than what, like, they try and maybe egg that you implied something that you didn't actually say, or they take specific wording that you said, and use the definitions of those words specifically without the context of your whole argument, and basically just take those words and say, right, you believe so, and so. And then you're like, no, I didn't say that. I said this, and I used those words because it relates to it. Or, those words, what the definition of it is a part of my argument, but I was not making this case, if you know what I'm trying to get at here. So, strawmanning is basically taking the context completely out of someone's argument for something, or their point they're trying to make, taking the context out of it completely, or misrepresenting what they said, as if they were saying something else entirely, or specifically taking words, or a tactic could be like picking out words from what they said, and accusing them of saying like this other thing with that specific wording from your argument, when in reality that is not the point that they were trying to get across at all. Again, either knowingly or unknowingly, as can happen in major manipulative forms, or just small, like subconscious forms. So, what's an example of strawmanning, or strawlining, as I'm going to call it? Okay, let's say, what's an example in terms of, like, sociological discourse, I guess, or, like, ideological discourse? Here's an example. I believe that hoarding your wealth is detrimental to hoarding dubious amounts of wealth for yourself in terms of financial gain is destructive overall to the economy and people's ability to gain a stable income, in terms of, if we're arguing, like, in say of like capitalism and things of the sort. And then someone else says, right, so you think that hardworking people who work for their money are all pigs, or are all sociopaths, and are uncaring of others, and that they are lazy, and they don't deserve the money that they've gotten because of their hard work, or because you just think that people don't deserve to get their fill, or to be able to survive. No, I didn't say that at all. That is completely spinning, like, what I was saying there. I didn't say that in the slightest. I didn't say that hardworking people are lazy. I didn't say that they're monstrous, or that they're empathyless. I didn't say anything of the sort like that. And I didn't say that you shouldn't gain money for your survival. I didn't say that in the slightest. That's taking the context out of everything that I said. I said that I think hoard a large portion of your wealth to a point that I think it actively disrupts economies and people's livelihoods, and that it is detrimental. I didn't say that someone working hard... Now, maybe you worked hard to get that money. Yeah, But that doesn't mean that you having that amount of money is a beneficial or good thing. Like, for just yourself. That I didn't say that in this. I said that. I didn't say that them working hard to get it is the problem. I didn't say that hardworking people are lazy. You get what I'm saying here. Trying to spin the argument as if I said something else. Or what's another example? Let's say, what are we at here? Okay, 2 hours and 13 minutes. I don't know why I'm rubbing my beard with this. Anyway, basically, why would I say basically without having something to say? What's another example? Okay, maybe this is like an overly used example, but I'm just going to use this as like, as I guess it relates somewhat to what I talked about in my last video. I'm going to use this as an example. I think that there is mass cultural alienation towards specific groups of people, maybe people of the black community, in a lot of North American societies, specifically in Canada and the United States and a lot of Europe. I think there is heavy discrimination towards them, and I think that there has been a heavy prevalence and superiority complex associated with much of white culture. And I think it has led to a lot of, well, it has blatantly led to systemic racial problems, policies and institutions being put in place to subjugate and push away or defame cultural practices that aren't inherently problematic, that are associated with black people or people in the black diaspora. Remember the word this time. And I think that it is problematic, and I think that it leads to this cultural alienation leads to identity crises within people of that those ethnic groups within the diaspora, and I think that it can lead to internalized racial prejudice on themselves, and yeah, I say things of the sort like that, and it relates to and leads to a lot of problematic stereotypes or beliefs of these certain people. Someone else then says, so you think that all white people are racist, that everything that doesn't praise black culture is racist, and that all white people need to bow down to the black community as if they're the superior race. No, I didn't say that in the slightest, nor did I imply that. This is what I'm saying, an example of strawmanning, or what I'm calling strawlining. You're taking the context of what I said you're picking up the context, you're throwing it out the car window and letting it just roll backwards on the road, and you're driving far away from the context. You're going as far away from it as possible. You're or another example, you could say this for like LGBTQ plus communities. I think that there is heavy cultural and sexual alienation for people in the LGBTQ plus, and it causes a lot identity crises, mass spread, mass people to get into a swing of depression because of bigotry faced towards them in their livelihood, and yes, it leads to shaming for non-problematic expressions of their sexuality and things of the sort, or their romantic type. It leads to mass discrimination of it, if I'm saying this. Like, that I think a lot of systems that have been put in place hinder people's expression of their sexual attraction or romantic attraction and the sort. Someone strawmanning that argument would then say, So you think that all gay people are great? They're all just pristine, perfect little people, or that you think we all should be focused on sexuality and just sexualize everything and make it all about sleeping with whoever you want? Or for like just make like sex is saying that sex is just like the most important thing in life. No, I didn't say that in the slightest, nor did I imply that. You took completely everything I said out of context. And okay, so let's use another example. Say someone is, I'm using those two examples for racial discrimination or romantic or sexual discrimination that's non-problematic in terms of the culture, and you're like, let's say I use those examples, but then you say right, so all institutions are systemically racist, and all, what did I use as the example? All white people culturally alienate anyone of those cultures, or anyone who is not of that race is bigoted towards them, is what you're saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. They took words from what I said in my sentence, in my statement, and they used those words with those definitions of those words to spin a completely different narrative. I think you get what I'm trying to say with that. So yes, that is what would be examples of strawmanning, or what I'm going to call here strawlining. Again, that's not any official term, strawlining. The official term is recognized as strawmanning. So that's an example of that. So yes, that, and what could be now again, this could be used to severe degrees of manipulation, or again in just small everyday talk. I'm guilty. I mentioned in my Made It to Ottawa video that I accidentally strawmanned a friend of mine while I was at the cottage over the summer when we were on a phone call, and I didn't even realize it, and I need to apologize. I still haven't apologized to them because I haven't been able to get a hold of them on the phone. They said like it was to do with burdening people, and I was talking about how I didn't want to burden people by getting on a train or a bus for travel, because also it would hinder the experience of my journey that I'm trying to, what I may find in local experiences in the countryside, in the city, like whatever else. And I feel that I'm burdening them, and I don't want to burden people more than I have to, yada yada yada, all of that. But they gave an example. I think the example was so but Cam, you're using the facilities people create, you're using their labor to help you gain things for yourself. You're using roadways, you're walking on them, you're using clothes people have made, that you've purchased, or isn't that burning someone? And they said, though, what if someone is sleeping on someone's property, or if they're sleeping outside in the local environment on someone's property? Is that not you burdening them by being on their property in some fashion, I guess, if it's private property? But in terms of like modern day privatization of property. And then I said, because I thought maybe they were implying, I was like, well, so-and-so, homeless people aren't a burden on, like, in my opinion, aren't a burden. People who don't have anywhere to go aren't a burden on someone, like, on their land if they have nowhere to sleep, in most regards, if they're just catching a nap. And then they stopped me mid-sentence. They're like, no, don't take what I was saying out of context. Don't spin my words like that. I didn't say anything about homeless people being terrible or a burden on someone. I didn't mean it like that. I said, would that not be in some fashion, in terms of like privatization? It is your land, so wouldn't that technically, and they're using that land, wouldn't you be burdening the owners of that in some way by either asking for permission or not asking permission? Isn't that some way you putting some amount of pressure on them? So he wasn't saying anything about, they weren't saying anything about that in that regard. So I accidentally strawmanned them, and I'm going to apologize. When I'm able to get on a call with them, I'm going to apologize to them for that, if I remember to do so. So that's like a small example I could use there of where I didn't intentionally try to do that, but I did, and that was wrong of me to do, and I'm sorry for doing that. Okay, so that's what strawmanning is basically taking someone's argument or what they're saying, removing the context completely, trying to spin like in what they're trying to say, their point of the argument, trying to spin it to mean completely something else entirely, or also it could be taking specific words from what they said, applying them to something completely different contextually. So that's what strawmanning is, or if you want to call it strawlining. The next one, again, another one, almost to 2.5 hours. I may need to split this video up. Well, actually, no. I'll try and get through these ones in the next half an hour. The next one I'm going to talk about is a manipulation tactic called doublespeak. Now, again, like strawmanning, there's probably a large portion of people who have never heard of doublespeak, or wondering what doublespeak is. I didn't know this about this manipulation tactic until well, I guess I technically knew of it. I didn't know the term for it until how long? I guess I'll say the beginning of this year, 2022, in like January or February or something. So I didn't know about the term for this. So what is doublespeak? Or I guess if you want to put it in more of like initiating double speaking in your linguistics or your language, what you're doing. So what is doublespeak? Doublespeak, doublespeak is actually many times in psychology is basically referred to. It's also referred to as lying without lying, basically. And I know that sounds contradictory, which it kind of is, but it's not meant to be it's not meant to be more like taken seriously. It's just given like this slang term of lying without actually lying, even though it is just lying without lying is like the slang term for it, I guess, for doublespeak. So what is doublespeak? Basically, it's when someone when in conversation, if someone is asked something and like, let's say, did you do this? They, instead of outright lying per se, like, no, I didn't do this, or they deny it completely, they give a scenario where basically they say like, they cleverly this could be, again, intentionally, or if they need to, in a scenario where they need to manipulate, they don't really know or realize that they're doing it, where someone carefully constructs their wording to sound like they often use similar wording, like words, they say what they did, using words that have similar or the same definition as basically like words that are used, I guess, in like the questioning of your actions. And it's hard to explain for me right now. They basically use words that have similar definitions, and they're like, to make it seem like you were doing something else without actually saying you were doing something else. So, and it's usually done for if in future context you were found out of doing said thing, they can be like, no, I didn't say exactly that I did that. I said that I did this. You never said anything about doing that. So, I think you might be able to understand what I'm trying to get at there. Saying that, okay, let me use an example of double. I don't know if I can fully like explain, again, it's getting cold. I don't know if I can fully define like what I'm trying to get at here with my word finding issues. what I don't know if I'm really properly defining doublespeak right here, but let me give an example of it. Like, it's often seen most often in like criminal interrogation settings. Well, unless, well, no, actually there is heavy manipulation from the police's end in many regards, in my opinion, in terms of gaslighting, and their own manipulation. Well, I would say most police, in my opinion, are heavily manipulative. Not all, but most. And I think the policing system of all the world, pretty well every policing system in the world is horrible. Some are less terrible, but for the most part it's very encroaching and manipulative. Anyway, doublespeak. What's an example I could pull up? Okay, say someone asks the question, hey, did you throw, say someone found a broken vase of theirs and like, hey, did you throw you were here all of yesterday, did you throw my precious vase, or vase, did you throw my precious vase down the stairs and shatter it? Or did you knock it over, or what happened? How did it break? And you're like, and you're like, or you say, or the other person says, okay, I was in the room at the time doing, I was, okay, say, like, in the context, like, there's evidence, like, that the person actually was in a fit of anger and threw this person's vase down the stairs and broke it, and they're like, okay, I was there yesterday, I was doing some cleaning, and I was getting a little frustrated, and I might have, I might have gotten a little frustrated, I admit, but let's just say I didn't see where, some sort of object that might have been yours might have fallen, or might have been, moved across the room and may have gotten damaged. I didn't see that. I think you get what I'm saying. They're trying to make it sound like they did something similar, or like they were involved with something similar without actually saying, yeah, I did that. So that in future, when they come back and say like, hey, you did break my vase, here's clear proof that you threw my vase, and I was like, or no, here's another context. Maybe that's not the best example. Say like, there's evidence that someone was like, okay, you broke this, did you know that this was mine and you purposely broke it? And you're like, well, okay, I might have heard that, somebody in this house owned said vase, but I didn't, but I wasn't really aware of who that person may be. But then later it's like, yes, you did. I can point to the fact that that you knew it was my vase when you broke it, and you're like, no, I didn't say that. I never said, or when they maybe say like, you said last time that you knew it was my vase, or like they knew it was someone that's like, no, I said I knew it was somebody's vase. I didn't know it was your vase. It was somebody's. I didn't know that it was yours when I broke it though. So I didn't say that completely. So technically I didn't lie. This is what I'm using. This is what doublespeak is in essence, basically. Or let's use, I'm trying, again, I said I didn't want to use like extreme examples. I'm trying to think of one like, that isn't an extreme example, like, that doesn't involve like a very outlandish, like a very like intensive, like, well, not maybe intensive. Like I don't want to go to like something like, say, a murder scene where like someone's being like interrogated for something, and they're like, okay, maybe I was helping. Like if we're talking like in a mafia style, like if someone was involved in a killing of some kind, or in a shooting of some kind, and they're caught interrogating, like, did you kill this man, or were you involved with the execution of this person? And the person's like, okay, I was maybe at this place and time at this place at some point during the day, and I was just no, I wasn't involved. No, I wasn't there doing any sort of criminal act. I was helping some friends of mine at this place at a different time clean up. I was helping them clean up some bad garbage that needed to be taken out, basically. At that time, I wasn't, and I might have been in that place, but I was helping some friends doing that. You know what I'm trying to say here. But then if they're found out about it, they're like, no, we have clear evidence that you were at this place during this time, and this is directly, you said you were at this place during this time. It's pointing to you being involved with the murder. And like, hey, no. I might have said that I was at this place during this time, but no. I said that I was, or like you said, or a really outlandish example, like you did murder them, and you were like, you should have just, you said you weren't lying, why didn't you confess right there? Like, no. You said, did you, or say something along the lines like, did you help take, I said I helped take out some garbage that my friends wanted help taking out. You didn't specify if that meant piece of human garbage. You didn't specify if I meant executing someone, taking them out. I technically didn't lie. You know what I'm trying to say with this. So basically, if I think I don't have another way to like explain that. What's maybe a less extreme example I can think of while I have time with this. Double speak. Hey, maybe it should be more of like just an imposed question, like, hey, were you cleaning the floors and like left a whole bunch of water out on your last shift? If like someone's working a job and they're a janitor and they're like, okay, I was at this place during this time, yeah, and I was cleaning some stuff, and there might have been some spillage of some kind at some point. There might have been some spillage, but I can't concretely say whether I did or didn't do it. It's confusing, I know. And then someone's like, no, we know you definitely spilt that. You spilt that, or no, say the specific substance, like, hey, we have this vial of boric acid, highly corrosive boric acid, and did you spill it all over the floor? And they're like, okay, I may have spilt, there was a substance that I might have spilt. I think I did spill something, but I'm not really clear. Maybe I might have accidentally tipped some sort of solution out, and it might have gotten on the floor, and then later they find out that yes, you did spill that boric acid, and they're like, no, I said that, or like, did you know it was boric acid or whatever? I said that I might have spilled something on the floor. I didn't say that, I didn't say I knew it was boric. I said I spilled something on the floor. I didn't know you said nothing about it being boric acid, and I said nothing about it knowing that it was boric acid. So, I didn't misspeak. I didn't tell a lie, basically. I think you get what I'm getting at with this. That's an example of doublespeak. So, clarify, doublespeaking is shifting the word, it's shifting your words to try and seem like you're talking about something else, or referring to you being involved with something else, when in reality you did do that thing, or you were involved with that, but you're just trying to skew it and change your wording to, or use words that have a similar definition or the exact definition to what the person is talking about, to get out of any future consequences, most often if you're found out of being guilty of said action, basically. and my phone is dying, so I've really gotta get going with this. So that's double speak, basically. Shifting your words, kind of. To make it seem like you're talking about something else, when in reality you are implying that you did this thing. And again, people may wonder, well, why would anyone in their right mind, if they know they're guilty, imply that, even try and imply that they did something? It's to try, like, they know that they're, maybe if they're very smart with it, or they're very intuitive to the scenario, they're like, shit, I don't think I'm going to get out of this without them finding out about it, so I'm going to come up with something that sounds like an excuse that sounds similar to the scenario, so I can later be like, no, you didn't say anything specifically about that, so technically I didn't lie. I said I was doing this and that. You said nothing about it being this and that. I said I was doing something similar to that. You get what I mean. Okay, the next form of manipulation I want to talk about, which is one that, again, I'd say not as familiar as the first three that I talked about: gaslighting, blame shifting, and guilt tripping, or baseless guilt tripping. But it is, I guess, this one's definitely more well known than strawmanning or doublespeak. And that is coercion. Coercion as a form of manipulation, and relating to, I guess, what I said, and I guess we'll talk about policing, or just just trying to exert control over someone, or authority in some way, or not even that, just trying to, again, gain something for yourself, or getting something to do something that you'd like. A form of manipulation, or a manipulative method, would be coercion. And so what is coercion? Kind of what I explained. Just coercion is trying to persuade someone into doing an action, or doing something that they either would be comfortable with, or uncomfortable with, or unwilling to do, just trying to persuade them into doing it through varying tactics. It usually involves things in terms of more severe forms of manipulation in relation to coercion. Would be tactics such as intimidation, and violent threats, or just threat of some kind towards someone, that if you don't do this, I'll hurt you, or I'll hurt someone you care about, or things of the sort. Just trying to pressure someone into, and persuade someone into, or they're using pressurative tactics to persuade someone into either doing this, or even it can be like thinking, like in terms of belief, like trying to persuade someone into believing something, I guess. Well, coercion being like trying to, persuade them into believing something, I guess. So basically, what are examples of coercion? Well, let's use examples such as, I guess, okay, the policing forces. Like, I'm going to use an example. Say, if someone is in an interrogation setting, and they're not guilty of a crime, and they the interrogators are trying to get them to just confess and have it all be done with. We're basically like trying to persuade them into saying, okay, well, it's an example. Okay, you confess to this, and we'll guarantee your safety. We'll make sure that nothing happens to you. We'll try to work out your prison sentence or something of the sort, or we'll let you go if you confess. We'll let you go if you do that. Or they might say, like, if you don't confess right now, we're gonna beat the living shit out of you. If you don't confess now, we'll beat the living shit out of you until basically we make you confess, so that we get the information that we need, which is an intimidation tactic, and threatening, using threats to try and coerce them into admitting their guilt when they aren't, admitting to be guilty when they aren't guilty. And for as rare as people think that is in the police force, no, that is rampant in my opinion. That is absolutely rampant. Not all police, but I'd say most. That is very, at least in terms of investigative detective work in some regard. But anywho, coercion. They're trying to pressure you into doing that. Basically, you're saying, you're even providing proof that I didn't do this, and they're just like, okay, we'll cut a deal with this if you just do this. Basically, again, just trying to encourage them to do something, and they, and in return, will do a favor for you or something in that regard, or something of the sorts. Or, so what's a smaller example of this? Smaller example would be trying to okay, say you want somebody to go for a walk with you in the park, and you're like, hey, let's go hang out at the park today, and you're like, nah, I'm not really feeling it right now. I don't really want to. It's kind of, they're like, and then they're like, oh, come on, please, please, please. If you do that, if you go to the park with me, I'll buy you a new Nintendo Switch. Or I'll buy you a candy bar or something, or I'll buy you a free movie ticket or something. Like, you're trying to persuade them, like, okay, if you do this, I'll do this for you. You're trying to coerce them, and whether or not you actually hold true to that, you're trying to just coerce them into doing said thing, and eventually like, oh, okay, fine, yeah, I'll go with you. So that is a form of manipulation in and of itself. As I'm saying, that's coercion, is what I'm trying to get at. Okay, so definition of coercion: trying to persuade someone into doing an action that they either would be comfortable with doing or not comfortable with doing, through either some form of deal of some kind, or trying to cut a deal of some kind with them, or giving them some sort of reward in return for doing said action, or intimidating them using threats or violent threats in some regard, or just threatening them in some way using social threats, like, if you don't do this, I'll defame you in front of all your friends, or like, I'll leave you or something if you're in a marriage. So like, if you don't do this, I'll leave you. It's coercion. That's what coercion is. The next one, which was originally the last one I had on this that I remembered with the time I have, and I talked about, this is the one I talked about in my 4th Exploring Ottawa video at a point, and that manipulation tactic is dark empathy. Now, a lot of this, again, a lot of this, the consensus that is usually associated with dark empathy in terms of psychological studies is that it's a rare manipulation tactic overall, at least from everything that I've seen, which I'm getting to, as I said, I'm getting to a point with that where I really don't think that's the case. I would argue that in things such as, like I said, they're having a lot of fun over there. I would say that in political agendas, policing, in some forms of the healthcare system in many parts of the world, schooling systems, day-to-day life, really, just, I would say dark empathy is actually really, really sadly, I'd say dark empathy is sadly common. Like, and again, people who know they're doing it in many regards, and others who might not be, sadly, might not be aware of it. Is that an excuse for it? No, but I don't really, and even with the unaware thing, I actually think this is, might be, dark empathy might be the one that really has, like, no like, that doesn't have an instance where it's really not problematic. I'd say this is the one, like, the one manipulation tactic where even if you don't realize that you're doing it, it is heavily problematic, dark empathy. So anyway, just to clarify, what is dark empathy? Basically, dark empathy is pretending that you are being empathic towards someone, or that you have empathy or sympathy for someone, for their scenario or whatever they're going through, or just as a person or thing, that you have empathy towards it, and you care, and you have compassion and concern towards it, when in reality you are just putting on a persona, or you're putting on a face, a mask, to hide your true intentions. To hide the fact that you don't actually care, that you don't really give a damn, in a sense. So that's what dark empathy is. And I would say examples of this would be, as I gave in that video of mine, if you're saying that, let's use an example of someone having a one-night stand. Like, say if someone wants to engage in if someone's wanting to engage in platonic intimacy, or I guess not really a one-night stand, but someone is polyamorous in some way, or they're sexually promiscuous in some way, or they're just platonically intimate with some of their friends, and they engage in sexual relations with friends of theirs who aren't in a romantic relationship with them. Now, one of their friends claims that, and they very much enjoy just the passion of it, and they enjoy the activity, and they themselves have care for the sensualism of the experience. It's not just about gratifying it solely for themselves. They actually care about making it pleasurable for both themselves and their partners during it, and they actually enjoy sharing that experience with someone else, and they care that they're sharing a very sensual and passionate action together, having sex, or being sexual with them in some way, and understanding that it is very intimate, and having emotional connectivity, as I would call it, and caring about the other's interest for it, and understanding how powerful understanding the connection that you're sharing. Now, one of their friends pretends that they oh yes, they feel the same way, when in reality they really don't give a damn about the sensualism and human intimate experience that they're engaging in. They only care about gratifying their own sexual needs, because say maybe they feel that this person is really attractive, and they're like, oh, and I just want to have sex at this moment, and I want to gratify my own what I would consider to be their own hedonistic values. They want to they're completely self-obsessed, and they only want to gratify their sexual needs only for themselves. And they're basically lying to them and saying oh yes, I care about sharing this very passionate experience with you, but in reality it's bitch, give me your pussy, or something like that. Or they're just give me your dick, just give the dick, basically. Just, I don't care about any of the other stuff, give me the sex, because I want to gratify my own urges, and they don't want to actually engage with the person while having sex. They're just pretending that they care about that, so that when they actually initiate sexual contact, that it'll just be solely to appease themselves. That's what I would consider an example of dark empathy. That would be very problematic. So yes, that's what I would consider to be a form of dark empathy. I think you understand the familiarity of I think people in some form know what I mean. I could think of other examples for dark empathy, but I'm not going to touch on them right now. I know I really want to, but I just want to quickly touch on the last manipulation tactic that I just thought of, that I didn't have written down on this piece of paper, that I wrote all these down just so I remembered, as I forgot last night when I was writing it. I don't know if this is the actual technical term for this form of manipulation, or if it's just, I don't know what the technical term would be. I tried looking it up. I really couldn't find anything other than what I guess would be, if it is the technical term, it's also the slang term for it, just usual, but that manipulation tactic is just playing dumb, just playing stupid, basically, playing dumb. Like, and I think, again, another self-explanatory title. You're, like, playing dumb as if you don't know what you're doing or what has been done or what happened. Like, say, hey, did you piss on my face last night? And you're like, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. I don't know. I have no clue. Even though there's evidence, there might be evidence that you clearly did that, and they're just like, no, I still don't know. I don't know who that is. I have no clue who that is urinating on your face. I don't know. I have no clue. That doesn't look like me. That could have been anyone. I don't know. Just, I have no idea what you're talking about here. I don't know. Just playing dumb is the other form of manipulation. I don't even think I really need to explain this one other than that example I gave. In fact, actually, that's probably, maybe that actually, even more than I say, like, maybe that is actually the most common form of gaslighting. That's a different form of manipulation. The most common form of manipulation is just playing dumb, as if you don't know what you did, whether there's clear evidence of it or not. And you're just like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, so that was my whole video on manipulation. God, this is the longest video I've ever made. Again, breaking records, it seems, every time I upload, or close to every time. Nearly 3 hours long. It might even be 3 hours after I upload this. So anyway, stay safe out there is just what this whole video's purpose was. I logically feel, again, with my whole existential morality crisis, I don't know if people really are just deep down sociopathic in entirety, or if people really act upon their morals and what they say. In fact, just today, I didn't act upon what I morally hold to be, well, actually not lying to someone over. I shouldn't have answered this call. I'll talk about, I got on a call with someone, I barely spoke, and I just didn't want to talk to them because of issues I've had with them, and I just said, to all their questions, I was just like, yep, when I really wasn't, I didn't feel that way. I shouldn't have done that. I should not have gotten on that call. Anyway, happy Halloween. Stay safe out there. Yeah, look out for these forms of manipulation. Okay, goodbye. Got you. Yeah, I don't care. I honestly don't care. I'm gonna hammer this point in literally until, well, until it's considered a dead horse. That right there, that's a lawnmower. That's a lawnmower with large enough wheels, and it's going at a relatively, slow speed compared to the rest of the cars. I don't care. It has a safety sign on it. It's a lawnmower. A lawnmower going down the road. It's not causing any disrupt to traffic, at least as far as I'm concerned, and there are no police literally, well, at the very least, any police that I've seen around here or have passed down this road as I was walking, well, no one's calling the authorities on them, is all I'm saying.